I had lived in my suburban neighborhood for a few years, and for the most part, it was a peaceful place to be with friendly neighbors who waved when they passed by and families who minded their own business. But of course, no neighborhood is perfect, and ours had one constant source of drama, the infamous HOA. Karen, she was the type of person who believed the entire street was her personal kingdom, and the rest of us were subjects constantly, policing every little detail of our homes, our yards, and even the way we parked our cars when I first moved in. I tried to be polite with her. I even smiled and greeted her. But I quickly realized nothing would ever satisfy her standards, because within the first week, she had already left a passive-aggressive note on my door claiming that my grass was 1 inch too high, even though it was freshly cut. As the months went by, I learned that nearly everyone on the block had their own Karen horror story. She would call the HOA about the tiniest things, like a flower pot not being the right color or a mailbox being painted in what she called an unacceptable shade. Her behavior was irritating, but I never expected her to make me the target of a very strange and very petty habit, which was constantly knocking over my trash. At first, when I would come home from work and find it tipped over with garbage spilling onto the curb, I thought maybe it was the wind. We get gusts in our area, sometimes strong enough to push lightweight bins, but the strange thing was that none of the other trash cans on the street were ever disturbed, only mine. The first couple of times, I shrugged it off, cleaned up the mess, and wheeled the can back into place, but when it started happening every single week, I grew suspicious. One day, I even tried to secure the can by placing it closer to the fence, but sure enough, when I got home, it was lying on its side with my garbage bags torn open by stray cats. So I decided to get to the bottom of it and set up a small camera on my porch aimed at the street. The following Thursday, which was trash pickup day, I reviewed the footage, and I could not believe my eyes. There she was in plain sight, Karen walking her dog past my house. And without hesitation, she gave my trash can a deliberate shove, with her foot grinning as she watched it topple over onto the street. She didn't even try to hide it. She just kept walking as if she had accomplished something important. The audacity of it made my blood boil, because this wasn't just about a trash can anymore. This was about someone intentionally creating a problem for me out of sheer spite. I confronted her the next afternoon and asked her point blank why she was pushing over my trash. She laughed, yes, actually laughed, and said my bin was an eyesore to the neighborhood, and she was doing everyone a favor by making sure it wasn't standing out in the open. When I reminded her that the HOA rules specifically allowed trash cans to be left at the curb on pickup days, she brushed me off with a smug wave of her hand, telling me that rules didn't matter if something was ugly enough to ruin the look of the street. That was the moment I realized reasoning with her was pointless, and if I wanted the nonsense to stop, I would have to come up with a solution that would not only protect my property, but also show her she couldn't keep bullying me forever. And from that moment, my plan to deal with Karen began forming in my head. After catching Karen red-handed and realizing there was no reasoning with her, I decided it was time to turn the tables, because the more I thought about it, the more I understood that people like her only kept pushing boundaries as long as no one pushed back. I was tired of being her weekly entertainment, the guy whose trash she could kick over for fun. So I began researching ways to make my trash Karen-proof. At first, I considered chaining to the fence, but that felt too obvious, and she would just complain to the HOA about the chain. Then I thought about filling the can with heavy weights so it wouldn't topple, but that wouldn't solve the problem of her trying again and again, and it wouldn't give me the satisfaction of seeing her face when she realized her little game was over. Then one night, while scrolling through some DIY forums, I came across an idea that sparked the perfect plan. Someone had built a self-righting trash bin for windy areas using a weighted base that made the can bounce back upright no matter how hard it was knocked over, and I knew instantly this was exactly what I needed. But I wanted to take it one step further, because stopping her wasn't enough. I wanted to give her a taste of her own medicine. I went online, ordered a heavy-duty trash can with a reinforced base, and spent a weekend customizing it. I added a weighted circular base that would keep it balanced, then installed a motion sensor alarm inside that would go off the moment the can was forcefully tipped. I even set the alarm to a ridiculous volume 1 that could be heard halfway down the street. By Monday morning, my invention was ready, and I felt like I was setting up a trap for a cartoon villain. All week, I couldn't wait for trash day to arrive, and finally Thursday came. I wheeled my masterpiece to the curb, and left it sitting there looking as ordinary as ever. From the outside, you wouldn't guess it was a tricked-out fortress for garbage. I sat back with my coffee, pretending to read the paper, but my eyes were glued to the window, waiting for Karen. Sure enough, just after 9 o'clock, she appeared, walking her little yappy dog, and as always, she paused right in front of my driveway, looking around to see if anyone was watching. Then, with her usual smug grin, she gave the trash can a hard shove, expecting it to fall flat like it always did, but instead it bounced right back up like one of those inflatable punching clowns, wobbling back in a position perfectly upright. The look on her face was priceless. Her smile dropped instantly, replaced by pure confusion. She frowned, pushed it again, this time harder, and again it stood right back up, mocking her every effort. And then came the moment I had been waiting for. The alarm screamed to life, blasting a loud siren that echoed down the street, startling both her and her dog. The poor dog barked and yelped in panic, while she jumped back, nearly tripping over the leash. The neighbors began peeking out of their windows, some even stepping onto their porches to see what was going on, and I could hear laughter spreading as people realized what had happened. Karen's face turned bright red. She tried to shush the alarm by fumbling with the can, but the more she touched it, the louder it blared. Finally, in a panic, she grabbed her dog and scurried away, leaving the trash can standing tall and proud like it had just won a battle. I couldn't help but laugh so hard tears came in my eyes, and the best part was that the whole incident had been recorded by my camera once again, so I had solid proof of her antics and her hilarious defeat. The clip ended up being shared among the neighbors, and within days my trash can became something of a local legend. People would walk by just to look at it and chuckle, while Karen avoided my house altogether. From then on, she never touched my trash can again. In fact, she barely made eye contact with me, as if the memory of that embarrassing morning haunted her every time she passed by. And for the first time in years, the street felt peaceful, at least on my end, because the one lesson Karen learned the hard way was simple: if you keep knocking down other people, eventually you'll come across someone who makes sure you can't knock them over anymore.